Tractate Zevachim, General Introduction. Tractate Zevachim is the first volume of Seder Kodashim, which deals with the laws of korbanos, offerings, and the base Hamikdash. Zevachim itself deals mainly with the laws of animal and bird korbanos, the korbanos that accomplish their purpose by having their blood applied to the Mizbeach. However, in the course of these discussions, almost all other types of korbanos are mentioned, as are many of the general laws of Kodashim. We'll therefore present an outline of all the different types of korbanos, the ways in which they are offered, and the general rules of Seder Kodashim. Many people mistakenly think that the main part of offering a korban is to burn its meat and fat on the Mizbeach altar. Although there is a mitzvah to burn at least some part of almost all korbanos on the Mizbeach, what makes a korban valid and brings atonement to its owner is applying its blood to the Mizbeach. If the blood is put on the Mizbeach properly, the korban is valid, even if its emurin, the parts that should be burnt on the Mizbeach, are never burnt. If the blood is not applied properly, the korban is not valid, even if the emurin are burnt properly. 1. The korbanos. Korbanos come from a variety of different sources: animals, birds, plants, and even water. However, only certain species from each category may be used. A. Animal korbanos. There are only three species of animals, oxen, sheep, and goats, that may be used for korbanos. There are 9 categories of korbanos in which these animals are used: chatas, olah, asham, shlamim, todah, nazir's ram, bechor, meiser, and pesach. These terms are explained below. There are 3 parts to every animal korban: its blood, its emurin, the parts burnt on the mizbeach, and its meat. The procedure with each of these depends on the kind of korban it is. 1. Chatas, plural chatos, sin offering. A chatas is generally a korban brought to atone for certain kinds of severe sins that a person did unintentionally. See below. There are also chatos that are brought to atone for the entire nation. See chapter 5, Mishnahs 1 through 3, and chatos that come as part of the purification procedures for certain types of tumah. There are 2 categories of chatos: the outer chatas and the inner chatas. These terms refer to the places in the Beis Hamikdash where their blood is applied. A. Outer chatas. There are 2 mizbeachs in the Beis Hamikdash: an outer mizbeach, which stands outside in the main courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash, and which is used for the blood and amurin of almost all korbanos, and an inner mizbeach, which stands inside the Heichal building, and is used mainly for the twice-daily ketoras, incense offering. The outer chatas is a chatas whose blood is applied to the outer mizbeach. The blood of an outer chatas is applied to the 4 horns of the outer mizbeach. See the diagram of the mizbeach at the end of this introduction. Its emurin are burnt on this mizbeach, and its meat is eaten by the kohanim within the main courtyard. See chapter 5, Mishnah 3. An outer chatas may be either a communal korban, a korban brought on behalf of the entire nation, or a personal korban. The most common communal chatos are the ones brought on Rosh Chodesh and the festivals as part of their Musaf offerings. See chapter 5, Mishnah 3. The most common example of a personal chatas is the chatas brought by a person who unintentionally committed a sin for which he would be punished with kares had he done it intentionally. See Horayos chapter 2, Mishnah 6, and Rambam Hilchos Shigagos 1:1. The chatas is never brought on a voluntary basis. It can be brought only when it is required. See Rambam Hilchos Ma'aseh HaKorbanos 14:8. B. Inner chatas. The only type of korban that has its blood applied anywhere other than the outer mizbeach is the inner chatas. The blood of an inner chatas is applied to areas inside the Heichal building, in the Kodesh, including on the inner mizbeach, and in some cases in the Kodesh HaKodeshim, Holy of Holies. The emurin of these korbanos are burnt on the outer mizbeach. However, the rest of the animal, its meat, hide, etc., is not eaten or used, but is burned in a designated place outside of Jerusalem. 2. Olah, burnt offering, plural olos. The unique feature of an olah is that the entire animal, except its hide, is burnt on the mizbeach. No part of it is eaten. See chapter 5, Mishnah 4. Its blood is thrown on 2 of the corners of the outer mizbeach, on the lower half of the mizbeach. An olah can be either a required offering or a voluntary offering. 3. Asham, plural ashamos, guilt offering. The asham is brought to atone for 3 specific sins, as well as for certain purification procedures. See chapter 5, Mishnah 5. It cannot be brought voluntarily. Its blood is thrown on two corners of the outer Mizbeach, lower half. Its imurin are burnt on the Mizbeach, and its meat is eaten by the Kohanim in the main courtyard. The asham is always a personal offering, never a communal one. There is also a special asham that is brought by someone who is in doubt whether he must bring a chatas to atone for a severe sin. This is known as the asham talui. See Karaisos chapters 5 and 6. 4. Shalamim, peace offering. The shalamim offering is not brought to atone for any sin, but simply as an individual's voluntary korban. It too is sometimes brought as part of a purification procedure. There is also one instance of a communal shalamim offering, which is brought on the festival of Shavuos. See chapter 5, Mishnah 5. The blood of the shalamim is thrown on two corners of the outer mizbeach, lower house, and its imurin are burnt on it. In contrast to the chatas and asham offerings, most of the shalamim's meat belongs not to the kohanim, but to the owner of the offering, and it may be eaten by him and his guests. Only the breast and thigh of the right back leg are given to the kohanim to eat, and these parts may be eaten even by the wives and unmarried daughters of the kohanim, and by certain other members of their households. The shalamim may be eaten anywhere within the walls of Jerusalem for 2 days, and the night in between. In contrast, it's the chatas and asham, which may be eaten for only a day and a night. See chapter 5, Mishnah 7. 5. Todah, Thanksgiving offering. The Todah is brought to give thanks for being saved from a dangerous situation, for example, by someone who recovers from a severe illness, or who returns safely from a dangerous trip through a desert or across the sea, or by someone who is released from prison. Its blood is thrown on two corners of the outer mizbeach, lower half. Its imurin are burnt there, and its meat belongs to its owner and may be eaten throughout Jerusalem by any person for a day and a night. As with the shalamim, the breast and thigh of the back right leg are given to the kohanim and members of their households. See Mishnah in chapter 5, Mishnah 6. The todah is accompanied by 4 types of breads, 10 of each kind. 1 of each type is given to the kohanim, and the rest are eaten by the owner and his guests. Mishnah Menachos chapter 7, Mishnahs 1 and 2. 6. Nazir's ram. The Nazir's ram, adult male sheep, is a type of shalamim brought by a Nazir at the conclusion of his term of Nazirus, when he shaves his head. See General Introduction to Tractate Nazir. Like the shalamim, its meat is eaten by the owner, the Nazir, and his guests anywhere in Jerusalem. But unlike the shalamim, it may be eaten for only that one day and the night that follows. See chapter 5, Mishnah 6. Similar to the todah, it is brought together with 2 types of breads, 10 of each kind, with 1 of each kind being given to a Kohen. Mishnah Menachos 7:2. In addition to the meat usually given from a shalamim to a Kohen, the right front foreleg of the animal is also given to a Kohen. 7. Bechor, firstborn offering. A Bechor is the first offspring born to a cow, sheep, or goat, provided that it is a male. It automatically acquires sanctity when it is born, and it must be given to a Kohen, who brings it as a korban. Its blood is applied once to the lower wall of the outer mizbeach, and its meat is eaten by Kohanim and their households throughout Jerusalem, for 2 days and the night in between. See chapter 5, Mishnah 8. 8. Maser, animal tithe offering. Each year a person must count all the newborn offering of his cattle, sheep, and goats, and separate each 10th animal as a korban. This korban is brought by the owner, and its meat belongs to him under the same rules as the shalamim. Its blood is applied once to the lower wall of the outer mizbeach. See chapter 5, Mishnah 8. 9. Pesach offering. The Pesach offering is the lamb or kid that is brought as a korban on Erev Pesach and eaten that night at the Seder. Every person is obligated to participate in a Pesach offering by becoming a partner in one. It may be eaten only by those who became partners, those who registered to eat from it. It may be eaten throughout Jerusalem, but only until midnight. See chapter 5, Mishnah 8. B. Bird korbanos. There are only 2 types of bird korbanos, chatas and olah, and only 2 kinds of birds that can be used for them, turtle doves and young pigeons. 1. Bird chatas. The bird chatas comes as part of the purification procedure for the zava, woman who has given birth, and as a substitute for an animal chatas by a mitzorah who cannot afford an animal chatas. It is also brought by certain sinners, those mentioned in Vayikra chapter 5, verses 1 through 10, who cannot afford the regular animal chatas. Like the animal chatas, it cannot be brought as a voluntary korban. See Rambam, Maseh HaKarbanas 14:8. The bird is slaughtered through a procedure known as melika. See below section 2-C2. The blood of the bird chatas is sprinkled on the lower part of the outer mizbeach, and the remainder is then squeezed out over the base of the mizbeach. Its meat is eaten by the kohanim, with no part of it being burnt on the mizbeach. See chapter 6, Mishnah 4. 2. Bird olah. A bird olah is brought together with a bird chatas in all the situations requiring a bird chatas. Additionally, a bird olah can be brought as a voluntary korban. It too is slaughtered through malika, and its blood is squeezed out, not sprinkled, on the upper wall of the outer mizbeach. All of it is burnt on the mizbeach. See chapter 6, Mishnah 5. C. Plant korbanos. There are a number of plant substances that are used in korbanos. Wheat and barley flour are used in mincha offerings. Wine is used in nesachim libations. Olive oil is used mostly in mincha offerings. Levona, which is used mostly in mincha offerings, and wood, which is burnt on the mizbeach. 1. Mincha, plural menachos, flour offering. Menachos are korbanos made from flour, either unbaked flour or flour that is baked or fried. See General Introduction to Menachos. Menachos can be voluntary korbanos, but are also sometimes required. They are brought usually by an individual, but also sometimes as a communal korban. A mincha offering consists of a minimum of 1 isaron, the volume of 43.2 eggs of flour. It is usually mixed with olive oil, and usually accompanied by small amounts of levona, which is placed on top of it. All mincha offerings are made of wheat flour, except for the omer. See Vayikra chapter 2, verse 14, and Menachos 84a. And the sotas mincha, which are made of barley flour. See Bamidbar chapter 5, verse 15. The details of the many types of menachos are explained in the general introduction to menachos. 2. Nesachim, singular nesach, wine libations. All animal olah and shalamim offerings must be accompanied by a minchas nesachim. This consists of 2 parts, a Mishnah of flour and nesachim of wine. See Mishnah Menachos 9, chapter 9, Mishnah 6. The amount of the nesachim and mincha offering varies according to the type of animal used for the olah or shalamim. See Numbers chapter 15, verses 1 through 16. The wine nesachim are poured into one of the 2 bowls attached to the top of the mizbeach at its southwest corner, from where it drains to the ground beneath the altar. One can also donate wine as a voluntary nesachim offering. See the Mishnah in Menachos chapter 12, Mishnah 5. 3. Olive oil. Olive oil is added to most mincha offerings. See the Mishnah in Menachos chapter 5, Mishnah 3. Some are fried in it. See the Mishnah Menachos chapter 5, Mishnah 8. 4. Levona. Another important part of most menachos is a substance known as levona, which is usually translated as frankincense. Levona is made from the sap of a certain tree, which is drained and left to harden into small granules. Before a mincha is offered, a kometz of levona is placed on top of the mincha. As part of the mincha's offering, the levona is collected and burnt on the mizbeach. Levona is also used with the lechem hapanim, the special breads placed each week on the shulchan, table, that stands in the heichal. When these breads are removed on Shabbos, their levana is burnt on the mizbeach. See Mishnah Menachos, chapter 11, Mishnahs 5 and 7. It is also possible to donate a levona offering. See the Mishnah Menachos, chapter 13, Mishnah 3. The levona is burnt on the mizbeach. 5. Ketoris, incense. A variety of aromatic spices and other substances are blended to make incense. See Shmos chapter 30, verse 34, and Karaisos 6a for a list of the spices used. Ketoris is offered twice daily on the inner mizbeach. See Shmos chapter 30, verses 7 and 8. There is also a special Ketoris offering on Yom Kippur made by the Kohen Gadol in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. See Leviticus chapter 16, verses 12 and 13. 6. Wood. Wood is used to fuel the fires of the mizbeach. According to some, it can be donated as a separate offering. See the Brisa in Menachos 20b and 106b. D. Water and salt. A special Nesach offering of water is made each day of the festival of Sukkot, following the morning Tamid offering. Water is drawn from a spring just outside of Jerusalem and brought to the outer Mizbeach, where it is poured into one of the 2 bowls attached to the top of the southwest corner of the Mizbeach. See the Mishnah in Sukkah, Mishnah, chapter 4, Mishnah 9. Every korban burnt on the Mizbeach must have salt sprinkled on it. See Vayikra, chapter 2, verse 13. E. Categories of korbanos. All korbanos are divided into two classes: Kodesh Kodashim, literally most holy offerings, and Kodashim Kalim, literally offerings of lesser holiness. Kodashim Kalim, literally offerings of lesser holiness. These classifications are relative since all korbanos are holy. However, those classified as Kodesh Kodashim, most holy, have stricter rules than those classified as Kodashim Kalim, lesser holiness. 1. Kodash Kodashim. This category includes, 1. Kodesh Kodashim. This category includes the Chatas, Ola, Asham, and communal Shalamim, categories 1 through 4 of the animal korbanos, as well as the 2 bird korbanos. Kodesh Kodashim are distinguished by the law that their meat is either not eaten at all, as in the case of the inner Chatas and Ola, or that it is eaten only by male Kohanim, as in the case of the outer Chatas, Asham, and communal Shalamim, and only within the main courtyard. Also, Kodesh Kodashim must all be slaughtered in the northern part of the courtyard, and their blood must be received there. Additionally, they are all subject to the law of Me'ilah, the penalty for missing sacred items, see below section 7a, even before they are slaughtered. Bird offerings, mincha offerings, and the wine and water nesachim are also classified as Kodesh Kodashim, see Gemara 63a, 89b. 2. Kodashim Kalim. This category includes the personal Shalamim, Toda, Nazir's Ram, Bechor, Maser, and Pesach offerings, categories 4 through 9. These korbanos may be slaughtered anywhere in the courtyard, and all of them may be eaten even by non-Kohanim, except for the Bechor and the breast and thighs of the Shalamim and Toda, which may be eaten only by Kohanim, but may be eaten by their wives and married daughters and even slaves. They may also be eaten throughout Jerusalem. They are not subject to the Me'ilah penalty until they are slaughtered and have their blood thrown on the Mizbeach. Even afterwards, it is only the Emurin, which are burnt on the Mizbeach, that become subject to the Me'ilah. See Me'ilah 1:4. 2. Offering of Korban. For Korban to be valid, kosher, and accepted, it must be prepared and offered in a special way, by the right people and in the proper vessels. Different categories of Korbanos have different procedures and requirements. The specific procedures that are necessary for offering a korban are known as its avodah, plural avodos, literally sacrificial service. A. Consecrating the korban. Before korban can be offered, the animal, bird, or item being used for it must be first consecrated, made holy. This is done by the owner saying, I hereby designate this animal or bird or flower, etc., as a korban of a certain kind. For example, ola, chatas, mincha, etc. A person may also make a vow to bring a korban of a certain kind and then later say, this animal or bird or flower, etc., is hereby designated for my vow. By saying this, the designated item takes on the holiness of the korban that was vowed. A person may also consecrate, make holy, an animal or bird or flower, etc., to be a korban for someone else. In this case, the person for whom the korban was consecrated is now considered to be the owner of the korban. With certain kinds of korbanos, such as the mincha and nesachim offerings, the ingredients for these korbanos must first be sanctified by being placed in a kli shares, holy vessel, before their avodah can begin. See below sections 4b and general introduction to menachos. B. Who does the avodah? In most cases, only a male Kohen may perform the avodah. He must also be unblemished, without any significant physical defect. See Bechoros chapter 6 and 7, tahor, free of tuma, dressed in his Kohen's garments, and meet certain other requirements that are listed in chapter 3, Mishnah 1. One notable exception to this rule is the shechita, slaughter, of an animal korban, which may be done even by a non-Kohen. Similarly, many of the procedures done to prepare mincha, see general introduction to menachos, may also be done by a non-Kohen. C. Avodah, sacrificial service. There are many procedures that the Torah commands us to do with each type of offering. While all of these are required and it is mitzvah to do them, not all of them are necessary for the korban to be valid. The procedures that are absolutely necessary in order for the korban to be accepted are called the essential avodos. These will be defined separately for each category of korban. 1. Animal korbanos. The essential avodah of an animal korban begins with its slaughter, shechita. However, with most personal korbanos, in contrast to communal korbanos, there is another procedure that is done first. A. Semicha. Before an animal brought to atone for a sin is slaughtered, the owner places his hands on its head and leans his weight on it and confesses the sin for which he is bringing the korban. He says, I have sinned and have done such and such. I've repented before you, and this is my atonement. During smicha on a shalamim or todah, one does not confess, since these are not brought to atone for sin. Rather, he recites words of praise to Hashem. See Rambam, Maaser HaKarbanot 3:13 and 15. This procedure is known as smicha, leaning. While smicha should be done, if it was left out, the korban is still valid. See Gemara 6a. There is no smicha on bird offerings or communal offerings. B. Blood avodah. The main part of an animal korban is its blood avodah. This consists of 4 procedures: shchicha, slaughter; kabbalah, receiving, i.e. catching, in a kli sheres, holy vessel, the blood that spurts from the animal's neck; holacha, bringing the blood to the mizbeach; zerika, throwing or applying the blood to walls or horns of the mizbeach, and in the case of the inner chatos, sprinkling it in the kodesh kodeshim and kodesh, as well as on the inner mizbeach. These 4 avodos are essential. An animal korban cannot be valid without them. See Chapter 1, Mishnah 4. The remainder of the blood is then poured out on the base of the mizbeach. This is not an essential avodah. See Chapter 5, Mishnahs 1 and 2. C. Burning the amurin on the mizbeach. After the korban's blood is thrown or applied on the mizbeach, its amurin, the internal organs and fats described in Vayikra Chapter 3, verses 3 and 4, are removed and placed on the mizbeach for burning. These are the hard fats around the body cavity and the fats upon the stomachs, kidneys, and flanks, the kidneys themselves, the diaphragm, and parts of the liver. In the case of a lamb or sheep, its aliyah, fat tail, is also burnt. There, verse 9. For an olah, the entire animal is skin cut up and burnt on the mizbeach. There, 1:7 through 9. Although burning the amurin on the mizbeach is a required part of offering a korban, it is not an essential part. A korban is valid even if these parts were never burnt. D. Eating. After the amurin are removed and placed on the mizbeach, the meat of most korbanos is eaten. In the case of Kodesh Kodashim, it is eaten by the Kohanim in the main courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. Chapter 5, Mishnahs 3 and 5. In the case of the Kodesh Kalim, it is eaten by the owner and his guests anywhere in Jerusalem, except for certain parts of the meat that are given to Kohanim. See above, Part 1, A4. These may be eaten by them, their wives, their daughters, and even by their slaves. These too may be eaten anywhere within the walls of Jerusalem. See Chapter 5, Mishnahs 6 and through 8. 2. Bird korbanos. In contrast to animal offerings, which are slaughtered with a knife using the procedure known as shchita, bird korbanos are killed through a procedure called malika. The Kohen pierces the back of the bird's neck with his right thumbnail and cuts through the neck until he severs either the food pipe or the windpipe, in the case of the bird chatas, or both in the case of the bird olah. See Chapter 6, Mishnahs 4 and 5. A bird korban slaughtered through shchita is not valid. See Chapter 7, Mishnah 5. Another difference between bird and animal korbanos is that the bird's blood is not received in a clay sheres, but is applied to the wall of the mizbeach directly from the cut in the neck. See Chapter 6, Mishnahs 4 and 5. The bird olah is like the animal olah that it is burnt in its entirely on the mizbeach. However, the bird chatas is not like the animal chatas. There are no emurin in a bird chatas, and all its meat is eaten by Kohanim. See Chapter 6, Mishnahs 4 and 5. 3. Mincha offerings. Mincha offerings consist of flour, and in most cases olive oil and levona as well. A. Preparation. A mincha is first placed in a kli sheres to sanctify it. This can be done even by a non-Kohen, but if it was not done at all, the mincha is not valid. See Rashi 2 Mishnah, Menachos 26a. After placing the flour in a kli sheres and mixing it with oil, in the case of most mincha offerings, a kometz of levona is placed on top of it. Following this, a Kohen takes the vessel and brings it to the southwest corner of the mizbeach and touches it to the mizbeach. This procedure is known as hagasha, bringing near. Though it is biblically commanded, Vayikra chapter 6, verse 7, it is not an essential procedure, and the mincha is valid even if it was not done. See the Mishnah, Menachos chapter 3, Mishnah 2. There are also menachos that require other preliminary procedures. These and other details of the preparation of the various kinds of menachos are explained in the general introduction to menachos. B. The essential avodah. Mincha offerings obviously do not have any blood avodah, but they have a four-part avodah that corresponds to the four-part blood avodah of an animal korban. The first step is kemitzah. The Kohen forms a scoop with the middle three fingers of his right hand by bending them over his palm. He then pushes this through the flour until he fills the space under his fingers. See Menachos chapter 1, Mishnah 1, chapter 1, Mishnah 2. See Menachos chapter 1, Mishnah 2. The flour scooped out in this process is called the kometz. The act of removing the kometz from the mincha is called kemitzah. The second step for the Kohen is to take the kometz and place it in another kli sheres. He collects the levona from on top of the flour and places it in this kli sheres with the kometz. The third step is to bring the kli sheretz to the mizbeach, and finally the Kohen throws the kometz and levona on the fire to burn. See General Introduction to Menachos. There are also a number of menachos that are completely burnt on the mizbeach. See Menachos chapter 6, verse 2. With these, kemitzah is not performed. Rather, the mincha is taken straight to the mizbeach and burnt. 3. Disqualifications and invalidations. A great number of conditions and circumstances can disqualify or invalidate a korban. Much of Tractate Zevachim is taken up with the discussion of these conditions and circumstances. A. Disqualifications of the Kohen. For all avodos other than shechita, the person doing the avodah must be an adult male Kohen, free of bodily blemishes. He may not be tameh in the slightest degree. He must first wash his hands and feet in the temple courtyard with water from the kior, and wear the special garments of the Kohen Gadol. Wear the special garments of the Kohen. These and other conditions are discussed in chapter 2, Mishnah 1. The shechita, slaughter of an animal korban, may be done even by a non-Kohen or other disqualified person. See chapter 3, Mishnah 2. However, the malika of a bird korban and the kemitzah of a mincha must be done by a qualified Kohen. See the Gemara in 69a. B. Animals not permitted as offerings. There are a number of conditions that disqualify an animal from being used as a korban. The most common one is a blemish, a body defect or missing limb. The disqualifying blemishes are listed in Bechoros chapter 6. If the blemish is a temporary one, if the blemish is a temporary one, the animal may be offered after the blemish has healed. An animal that killed a person, or which was used in a perverse act, or which was the object of idol worship, or had been set aside as an offering to an idol, is disqualified. Still, other disqualifications are listed in chapter 8, Mishnah 1. C. Invalidations due to improper intentions. A korban is affected not only by what is done to it, but also by the intention of the person doing the essential avodah. Certain improper intentions invalidate the korban, either partially or completely, even when the avodah itself is done properly. Most of the first 4 chapters of Zevachim deal with the invalidations that result from having improper intentions while doing the essential avodah. There are 4 invalidating intentions. These are 1. Shelo lishma, not for its own sake. A korban is supposed to be offered for the sake of the type of offering for which it was designated. For example, an olah for the sake of an olah. If a korban is offered for the sake of a different type of korban, for example, an olah for the sake of a shalamim, the korban itself is not invalidated, but the owner does not fulfill his obligation with it. The avodah of the korban is therefore completed. Its emurim are burnt on the mizbeach, and its meat is eaten, but the owner must bring another korban to fulfill his obligation. There are 2 exceptions to this rule, the chatas and the Pesach offering. If these are intended for the sake of a different type of korban, they are completely invalid. This invalidation is discussed at length in chapter 1. 2. Not for the sake of its owner. An offering is also supposed to be offered for the sake of the person bringing it. See chapter 4, Mishnah 6. If it was offered for the sake of someone else, the owner does not fulfill his obligation, but the korban is valid, as with the previous invalidation. Here too, the chatas and Pesach are exceptions in that they are totally invalidated. See the Gemara on 7b and 8a. 3. Past its time, pigul. The Torah sets a time limit for throwing or applying the blood of a korban, bringing its emurim and eating its meat. If the blood is not applied within this time, the korban is invalid. If the emurim are not burnt within this time, they may no longer be burnt, and any meat left over past this time cannot be eaten. Even intending to use these items past their time is prohibited during the avodah. If someone offers a korban with the intention of throwing its blood, burning its emurim, or eating its meat past the time allowed for these things, the korban is completely invalid and becomes known as pigul, literally rejected. See chapter 2, Mishnah 2. Its meat is prohibited, and eating it is punishable by karas. See Vayikra chapter 7, verse 18, and the Gemara in 29a. Each of these different parts of a korban has its own time limit. The blood of a korban must be put on the mizbeach before sunset of the day on which it is slaughtered. The amorin must be put on the mizbeach to burn before dawn of the next morning. The meat of the korban may be eaten for only a day and a night for some korbanos, and 2 days and the night in between for other korbanos. See chapter 5. Thus, what is considered past its time changes depending on which part of the korban we are talking about. But whatever time it is, doing any of the 4 essential avodos with the intention of using that part past its time makes the entire korban into pigul and eating its meat subject to kares. 4. Outside its place. The blood of most korbanos must be thrown, and the amorin of all korbanos must be burnt on the mizbeach that stands in the main courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. The meat of a korban may be eaten only in certain places. Kodshei kodashim may be eaten only in the courtyard, and kodshim kalim within the walls of Jerusalem. If the person doing the essential avoda intends to throw the blood or burn the amorin outside the courtyard, or to eat the meat outside the place in which it should be eaten, he completely invalidates the korban. However, there is no kares penalty attached to eating the meat of this korban, as there is in the case of pigul. The same is true if he intends to sprinkle the blood of an inner chatas outside the courtyard instead of in the kodesh and kodesh hakadoshim. It should be noted that these last 2 intentions invalidate the korban even if they are never fulfilled. The mere intention to do these things invalidates the korban. These 2 intentions are the subject of chapters 2 through 4. D. Invalidations of the parts of a korban. The disqualifications and invalidations that we have discussed up to this point are those that affect the korban as a whole. However, once a korban has been slaughtered, its individual parts can become invalidated in 3 additional ways, without necessarily affecting the rest of the korban. 1. Leaving its area. Blood is invalidated by being taken out of the main courtyard. The same is true of the amorin. If the blood or amorin are taken out of the courtyard, they may no longer be used. However, this affects only what was taken out. If there is still some blood or amorin inside the courtyard, that blood and amorin may be used. Similarly, meat is invalidated if it leaves the area in which it may be eaten, with the result that it becomes forbidden to be eaten. However, whatever meat remains in the permitted area may be eaten. 2. Tuma. If the blood, amorin, or meat becomes tameh, it is invalid and can no longer be used. However, if only some of the blood or amorin or meat becomes tameh, the rest may still be used. If all the blood of a korban was taken out or became tameh, the korban is effectively invalidated because there is no blood that can be used to permit it. 3. Leftover past its time. Meat left over past the time allowed for eating it is called nosar, literally leftover. Nosar meat must be destroyed by burning, Teruma 7:5. There is a biblical prohibition to eat nosar, and doing so is the subject of the penalty of kares. See chapter 4, Mishnah 5, and Keraisos, chapter 1, Mishnah 1. Blood and amorin left over past their time may not be put on the mizbeach. See above, section C3. E. Invalidations throughout the avodah. Korbanos can also be invalidated by having their avodah done improperly. For example, being slaughtered or having their blood received in the wrong place in the courtyard, or by having their avodah done at night, or by a disqualified person. These disqualifications affect the entire korban. F. Levels of invalidation. A korban that has been invalidated may not be offered on the mizbeach. Its blood may not be thrown or applied to it, and its amorin may not be burnt on it. Even if the blood were thrown on the mizbeach, it does not atone, and the amorin may not be placed on the mizbeach for burning, nor may its meat be eaten. G. If they went up, they should not come down. Nevertheless, there are some invalidations that are not absolute. Although it is forbidden to place the amorin of any invalid korban on the mizbeach, with certain invalidations, the rule is that if their amorin were for some reason placed on the mizbeach anyway, they are not removed from it and must be left there to burn. This law is known as, literally, if they went up, they may not come down. This law affects only the amorin. The korban as a whole is still not accepted. Its meat may still not be eaten, and the owner has not fulfilled his obligation. Nevertheless, the amorin stay on the mizbeach to be burnt. Other invalidations are absolute, so that even if their amorin were mistakenly placed on the mizbeach, they must be removed and may not be left there to burn. This rule is known as, literally, if they went went up, they must come down. Which invalidations fall into each category is the subject of Chapter 9. 4. Levels of holiness. A. Basic sanctity. Before anything can be brought as a korban or donated to the Beis Hamikdash, it must be designated for its purpose with an oral declaration, i.e., the owner of the object declares it to be holy. This gives it its basic level of holiness. See above section 2a. The type of holiness it gets depends on what he specified. 1. Temple treasury sanctity. The term berek habayis literally means the repair of the house. This refers to property consecrated, made holy, to the treasury of the Beis Hamikdash, to be used for the repair of the Beis Hamikdash, and not as korbanos. It also refers to property that is donated to the treasury so that it can be sold, with the money being used to pay for the repairs and general expenses and upkeep of the Beis Hamikdash. For example, to pay the workers who make repairs or who do other necessary work for the Beis Hamikdash. Anything declared holy for this purpose immediately becomes the property of the Beis Hamikdash. Most things in this category are subject to the laws of Me'ilah, misuse of holy things, see below section 6a. The management and sale of these objects is handled by the Gazbar, treasurer of the Beis Hamikdash. 2. Monetary sanctity. A person may declare that he is designating certain coins or objects for the purpose of buying a korban. The money or object becomes holy for that purpose. The animal, bird, flower, etc. he then buys with the money or receives in exchange for that object automatically becomes sanctified as the korban for which he designated the money, and it becomes sanctified with physical sanctity. See below. It can now be used as a korban. See above section 2a. Objects in this category are subject to the laws of Me'ilah, if the korban for which they are designated is subject to Me'ilah. Thus, if the money was designated for the purchase of korbanas that are considered kodesh kodashim, such as an ola, chatas, or asham, see above section 1e, the money is subject to the laws of Me'ilah. 3. Physical sanctity. Once an animal or bird that is fit to be a korban has been consecrated as a korban, it becomes sanctified with physical sanctity. It is now ready to be used as a korban. The same is true for an animal or bird that was purchased with money that was consecrated for buying a korban. Items that have physical sanctity cannot be redeemed or sold. The laws of Me'ilah apply to them if they are in the category of kodesh kodashim. The laws for menachos and sachim are somewhat different. Their ingredients do not acquire full sanctity until they are placed in a kli sheres, holy vessel, before being offered. See Menachos chapter 12, Mishnah 1. 4. Disqualified live offerings. If an animal korban becomes permanently blemished, after it acquires physical sanctity, it can no longer be offered as a korban. It falls to a lower level of sanctity. It may now be redeemed for money, and the animal can then be slaughtered and used as ordinary non-holy meat. See Vayikra chapter 27, verse 11, with Rashi. The redemption money takes over the sanctity of the redeemed korban and is used to buy a new korban of that kind. Although redeeming the blemished animal removes its sanctity, the animal may not be used for work, or for its wool or milk. It can only be slaughtered and used for meat. See Teruma 31a. Bechor and Meiser offerings that become blemished are not redeemed, but may simply be slaughtered for meat on the basis of their blemish. See Teruma 3:5. A korban animal can be redeemed only because of a permanent blemish. If it becomes disqualified from some other reason, it must be left to graze until it develops a permanent blemish before it can be redeemed. See Teruma 28b, Rambam Isuri Hamizbeach 3:10. For this reason, the Mishnah and Gemara often state about animal korbanos that cannot be offered for one reason or another. They should be left to graze until they develop a blemish, after which they may be redeemed and slaughtered. See, for example, Pesachim chapter 9, Mishnah 6 and 7, Bechoros chapter 2, Mishnah 6 through 8, and Teruma chapter 3, Mishnah 3. A blemished animal can be redeemed only while it is still alive. See Teruma 32b. B. Kodesh Kodashim Kodesh Kalim. See section 1e. 5. Offering korbanos outside the Beis Hamikdash. A. The prohibition. The Torah commands in Devarim chapter 12, verse 6, and also Vayikra chapter 17, verse 5, that korbanos be offered at the nation's main temple, the Mishkan in earlier times, and later the Beis Hamikdash. The Torah also prohibits offering a korban anywhere else. See Vayikra chapter 17, verses 3 and 4. Someone who offers a korban outside the Mishkan or Beis Hamikdash violates the positive commandment to offer it at the temple and the prohibition to offer korban outside the temple. This prohibition carries the penalty of kares. This subject of offering outside is dealt with at length in chapter 13. B. Bamos, singular bama. The Torah indicates, however, that it would be permitted during certain historical periods to offer certain types of korbanos outside the temples of those times at a private mizbeach called bama, plural bamos. Exactly when these periods were and what the rules were for offering korbanos at these private mizbeachs is the subject of chapter 14. Once the Beis Hamikdash was built in Jerusalem by King Solomon, the period of bama permissibility came to an end forever. See Mishnah 8 there. 6. Me'ilah, misuse of sacred property for personal benefit. It is forbidden to use things that have been consecrated, either to the treasury of the Beis Hamikdash or as korbanos, for personal benefit. The word the Torah uses to describe this transgression is me'ilah, literally betrayal. Someone who uses sacred property by mistake must atone for his sin by bringing an asham offering, the asham me'ilos, see chapter 5, Mishnah 5. In addition, he must pay back the value of the object he used and add a fifth as a penalty. See Vayikra chapter 5, verses 4 through 16. If he misused the property deliberately, he is punished with malchus, lashes. In that case, he does not bring a korban, nor does he add a penalty of a fifth to what he pays back. Of all types of property consecrated to the treasury of the Beis Hamikdash, almost all types of property consecrated to the treasury of the Beis Hamikdash are subject to this law. Animals that were consecrated as korbanos but not yet slaughtered are subject to the penalties of me'ilah, bringing an asham, adding a fifth, only if they are kodesh kodashim. See section 1e. Although it is forbidden to have personal benefit from kodashim kalim animals as well, they are not subject to the me'ilah penalty until they have been slaughtered and their blood has been thrown onto the mizbeach. At that point, their amurim become subject to this penalty, but their meat does not. Mincha offerings are also subject to me'ilah. Once the kometz has been offered, only the kometz is subject to me'ilah, not the remainder. Me'ilah, chapter 2, Mishnah 8. 7. The structure of the Beis Hamikdash. When the people of Israel were first commanded by Hashem to build the temple, they were in the wilderness after having left Egypt. The temple they built, which was called the Mishkan, was necessarily portable, so that it could be carried through the wilderness with them on their travels. Wherever they camped, the Mishkan was put up in the middle of the encampment, with the tribe of Levi camping immediately around the Mishkan and the rest of Israel around the Levaim. Thus there were 3 camps in the encampment: the camp of the Israelites, the camp of the Levaim, and the camp of the Shekhinah, i.e. the Mishkan. Each of these camps had a different level of holiness, with the camp of the Israelites having the lowest and the camp of the Shekhinah having the highest. These levels of holiness are relevant to a number of different laws. See chapter 1 of Kalim, Mishnahs 7 and 8. When the Beis Hamikdash was built, it was built on a hill in the city of Jerusalem. The city, hill, and Beis Hamikdash took on the 3 levels of holiness that were present in the wilderness encampment. The city became the camp of the Israelites, the hill became the camp of the Leviim, and the Beis Hamikdash became the camp of the Shekhinah. A. The city of Jerusalem. The holiness of the city of Jerusalem made it fit for eating the meat of Kodesh Kalim offerings as well as Meiser Sheni, the second Meiser removed from crops that grow in Eretz Yisrael. These could have been eaten anywhere within the walls of the city. See Kalim, chapter 1, Mishnah 8. B. The Temple Mount. The second level of holiness was the Temple Mount. This area was surrounded by massive walls. The main difference between the Temple Mount area and the rest of Jerusalem is in regard to the laws of Tumah. Many categories of Tamei people are prohibited to enter the Temple Mount, or parts of the Temple Mount, some under biblical law and some by rabbinic law. See Kalim chapter 1, Mishnah 8, and Gemara here 32b. The women's courtyard is located in this area and shares its level of holiness. C. The main courtyard. The third level of holiness was the main courtyard of the Beis Hamikdash. This courtyard surrounded the Beis Hamikdash building, which was known as the Heichal. The entire area within the walls of the main courtyard is considered the camp of the Shekhinah. No one who is Tamei in the slightest degree may enter it. The main mizbeach is located in this courtyard, and the avodah of all korbanos must be done in it, except for those that are done in the Heichal building. The meat of Kodesh Kodashim offerings must be eaten there. The main courtyard is itself divided into several sections, each of which has different rules. These are listed in Kalayim chapter 1, Mishnahs 8 and 9. D. Heichal. The main courtyard is open to the sky. On the west side of this courtyard stands the building known as the Heichal. This building is divided into 3 sections. A. The Ulam, antechamber, the broad entranceway to the Heichal building. B. The Kodesh, holy. And C. The Kodesh HaKadoshim, holy of holies. Each of these areas is subject to increasingly strict rules. See Kalayim chapter 1, Mishnah 9. The Kodesh HaKadoshim has the highest level of holiness, and it is entered only on Yom Kippur and only by the Kohen Gadol, when he must sprinkle the blood of the inner chataos of that day inside it and make a special ketoros offering there. In the first Beis Hamikdash, the ark containing the 2 stone tablets of the Ten Commandments, stood in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. This was missing from the second Beis HaMikdash, and a large stone called the Shesia stone, which had been there when the Beis HaMikdash was first built, marked the spot where the ark had originally stood. See the Mishnah, Yoma, chapter 5, Mishnah 2. The Kodesh is separated from the Kodesh HaKadoshim by a curtain called the Paroches. The Kodesh contains the golden Mizbeach, the menorah, and the Shulchan, golden table holding the Lechem Apanim. The Mizbeach. As we have seen, there are 2 Mizbeachs in the Beis HaMikdash, an outer Mizbeach that stands in the main courtyard, and an inner Mizbeach that stands inside the Heichal. Almost all korbanos are offered by the outer Mizbeach. The inner Mizbeach is used mainly for burning the daily Ketores, incense offering, and for sprinkling some of the blood of inner Taos. 1. The inner Mizbeach. The inner Mizbeach is 1 amma square by 2 ammas high. It has 4 small horns on top of it, 1 at each corner, and it is covered in gold. See Shmos chapter 30, verses 1 through 3. The outer Mizbeach, the outer Mizbeach. The outer Mizbeach measured 32 by 32 amos at its base. See Midos chapter 3, Mishnah 1. It is made of small, smooth stones held together by mortar, which hardened into a cement-like smooth surface. See the Gemara 54a. It is situated roughly midway between the northern and southern walls of the courtyard. See Midos chapter 5, Mishnah 2. It is situated midway between the entrance to the courtyard and the entrance to the ulam, 22 amos west of the courtyard's entrance, 22 amos east of the ulam's entrance. The Mizbeach is 9 amos high, see below. On its south side, a long ramp leads up from the floor of the courtyard to the top of the Mizbeach. The ramp measures 31 amos along its base, from the beginning of it up to the south wall of the Mizbeach. The ramp is 16 amos wide. The Mizbeach is built as follows. At the bottom is a base that extends out 1 amma beyond the rest of the Mizbeach. This base is 1 amma high. The base measures 32 by 32 amos, but it does not actually surround the Mizbeach on all sides. Rather, it runs only along the western and northern sides of the Mizbeach, and then wraps around just the southwest and northeast corners of it for just 1 amma. On top, by the way, there's a diagram you could see if you actually buy the Mishnah Elucidated in English, book number 14. It is on page 26 and 27. Okay, back to the words of the introduction. On top of the base is another block made of smooth stones and mortar measuring 30 by 30 amos. This second block is 5 amos high and thus reaches to a height of 6 amos above the floor of the courtyard. A third block measuring 28 by 28 amos sits on top of the second block, leaving an empty space of 1 amma on each side. This extra amma is used as a walkway around the Mizbeach and is called the Sovev ledge. See diagram below. The third block is 3 amos high and its top is the roof of the Mizbeach. It is here that the fires burn and the amurim are burnt. See Gemara 54a. Thus, the Sovev ledge is 3 amos below the roof of the Mizbeach. The Kohanim walk along this ledge to do certain avodos, for example, to put the blood of the animal chatas on the horns of the Mizbeach, to make malika, and to apply the blood of a bird olah. On top of the Mizbeach are 4 horns, 1 at each corner. These horns are actually cubes measuring 1 by 1 amos and standing 1 amma high. Including these horns, the Mizbeach is 10 amos high. Midway between the courtyard floor and the top of the horns, i.e. at the height of 5 amos, is a red line known as the Chut HaSikra. This line goes all around the Mizbeach and marks the boundary between the upper half of the Mizbeach and the lower half. 8. The special merit for studying the laws of Kodashim. In addition to the great merit attached to learning any part of the Torah, there is a unique quality attributed to studying Kodashim. Our sages tell us in Megillah 31b that Hashem promised our ancestor Avraham that offering the Korbanos would protect his descendants from total destruction. But Avram, who foresaw the possibility of the Beis HaMikdash being destroyed, was not satisfied. He asked for an assurance that his descendants would survive even in exile. In response, Hashem promised Avraham, I have already set before them the biblical passages of the Korbanos. As long as they read them, I will consider it as if they had actually brought these Korbanos to me, and I'll forgive their sins. Indeed, the prophet Hosea, in chapter 14, verse 3 proclaims, let our lips compensate for the bulls of the Korbanos. Although the sages understood this to refer to prayer, see Yalkut, there is an ancient tradition that the prophet also returns to reading the passages dealing with the Korbanos. See the prayer at the conclusion of Korbanos section of Shachris. And if simply reciting the Torah passages dealing with Korbanos has this great merit, then surely studying the laws of Kodshim has this power. See Chofetz Chaim in Mamar Torah Or. May the merit of studying these laws hasten the Gula Shalema, ultimate redemption, in our days.